Will Freeman is one of those brilliant people whose 20-year career spans many areas of the games industry. He's a freelance video game journalist, a mock reviewer, a copywriter, consultant, event curator, and much more. He's worked with a huge list of notable brands and publications, including The Guardian, BAFTA, Epic, the BBC, EA, Vice, PC Gamer. I could go on and on for hours. Now, while we do talk about games journalism in this episode, it quickly turned into an honest and authentic conversation about his career journey and personal struggles. What we're left with is a wonderful love letter to the games industry. I am sure you're going to enjoy this one. Let's get on with it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Goth Boss podcast. I'm your host, Kat Burton. Today, I've got my good friend Will Freeman joining me. Will has had an amazing career in games. We've known each other for a very long time, and probably it's better for you to introduce yourself. Will, could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone, and thanks, Kat, for having me. Yeah, it was somehow we're at the time of recording a few days past me having done what I do in games for 20 years, largely as a freelancer, and it's ended up a weird mix, and I love that. But yeah, I am a journalist. Write for all kinds of places like Guardian, Eurogamer, and Edge, but actually more defining of my work is perhaps gamesindustry.biz, trade writing, so writing for an industry reader. I used to be editor of Develop magazine, and that's led to all kinds of other things. I do bits of copywriting, research projects, curating events or content for events and hosting stuff. I guess consulting on game design, bits of script editing. I always am aware, if you went to my LinkedIn profile page, you see I use about 800 words to describe what I do, and I'm meant to be a writer. Like, I'm meant to be good with words and succinct with words, but I've also kind of learned having a career that's hard to describe wasn't a plan, but it's ended up being this. Yeah, I do a really wide range of things in the games industry. I guess it boils down to writing and words and loving, whether it's in the industry or beyond the industry, sharing what games are and what goes into them. So yeah, is that a description of what I do? It's really, it's weird. I'll be one day I'll be planning the career stage for Eurogamer, and the next writing some journalism piece about arcade culture, and the next doing some, I don't know, getting involved in a 20,000 word white paper for another industry about understanding opportunities in games. I love that. That's been a real opportunity, is working with other sectors, sort of harnessing or trying to understand what games is. So yeah, loads of different things. And I just set out when I was 13, 12. We need this bit. I got an Amiga 500 plus. That must have been when I was about 12. And there was something about that machine that mine came with deluxe paint, so, and a coding language, and just to get games going, you had to put a little bit of effort in, and maybe type in the odd command here or there. And it just felt this machine that exposed me to creativity with computers and games. I couldn't afford many games; they weren't free then. So Amiga magazines, Amiga Power, Amiga Formats, CU Amiga, the one for Amiga. I used to get them all, and they come with discs on the front with game demos, and that was an affordable way to get games. But I fell in love with what games magazines were as well, and this concept of what goes into games, and wanting to share game. I think that's still what I want to do, is share games and share information about games and share things happening in games. And maybe I became a writer because I can edit my written sentences and not the ones that come out here. There you go. That's my answer.
No, I love that. I think we had a pre-call before this, just have a good blether and a catch up. And one of the things we were both saying is, so as you progress through your career, you become less focused on one specific thing, and you become, for want of a better phrase, a bit of a jack of all trades, but you take on lots of different things.
Yeah.
You're able to do many different things, and so do I. And often that's frowned upon, but
Yeah, I thought, right, and this is probably all careers or just life, in our, life as an adult in a large part of the world, is you decide on a role, and you have that role. And I guess so I thought, I like games and I love the games magazines and I love writing. I will be a games journalist. And I became that. And then it wasn't a strategy or plan. I was kind of driven by an instinct to try new things and get involved. I think that would be the same in my life in general. My mid-40s, I'm still clinging on to skateboarding and getting involved in the local skate park getting set up years ago, getting involved in community, like all those things, those instincts came over. And so, yeah, this desire to, I'll try that. And I thought, ooh, I'm going to stay within a role. And then, yeah, I haven't got a role as my kind of slightly flailing attempt to describe what I do, right? I've had 20 years to think about how to describe what I do for a living, but it's just constantly evolving and it's always different. And I guess I discovered that rather than set out to do it, driven by kind of enthusiasm and overexcitement and are willing to give stuff a go. That what and I guess that's where this thing comes up of like I wasn't so aware of it then, but sort of listening to yourself and what works for you. And at the time it was in a more confused state, but I've realized I have sort of carved a career that fits my brain and found out that you don't have to have a job title or a singular role. And yeah, that can also be quite a kind of sustainable being able to do it. But again, I don't want to project that I had a strategy. I just kind of charged in overexcited and here I am. But I think that's a really, there's a kind of like purity and or naivety. I don't know, but yeah, I wasn't driven by a plan or a strategy or a wage or a goal. I was sort of driven by I had the goal of games journalism, and I felt lucky. Not everyone knows what they want to do, right? But yeah, I very much, rather than having a goal or a strategy, I followed in being enthusiastic. Yeah.
I think that's one of the lovely things about games is that you can sort of move between roles and you can try different things. And I think that counts for the creative industries broadly as well. It's like you
Yeah.
can chop and change. And depending on how you structure your life, you can be a full-time employee if you want and go down that route, or you can do the route that you and I are doing, which is you're freelance and you sort of build your work and life in a way that works for you. And it takes a long time to figure that out, right? Like, I think both of us are quite late to figuring out like the kind of lives we want to be and
Yeah.
learning to be authentic and embracing who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I've come to that late. Like we can get into this later, but the very brief story, So I'll say the bit now is having an anxiety and trauma diagnosis and a likely neurodivergence, and it's been a journey, and it's only really been the last 5 years I've started working on myself. I don't know when it exactly starts, but more each year I've kind of been kinder to myself and kind of listened to myself, and that's really, really helped my career. But I must have been doing it in some way because it's yeah, it's a you mentioned coming to kind of finding yourself and your vibe and leaning into yourself later in life. That's wicked, and it really suits the career I have. And then I look back and go, but the career I have has always been informed by some sense of that, right? So yeah, it's really interesting. I guess there's two things there, right? You don't have to. I really like that thing. Like for some people, a 9 to 5 employed career works, and that's wicked. Like there's not a better way. I think the better way is listening to yourself. And I guess I found one, it's not too late to start that, and two, I guess I've done it in this. And something punched through and guided me to this kind of building a career that works for who I am, even though I kind of only really found out who I am years into that process. So they've happened together. That's a really simple way of putting it.
Yeah, it can take a long time to figure it out, and I do think games is really supportive and lovely in that, and I've met a lot of people over the years who are like us, and you go down the freelance route and you do make it your own career, and you make your own opportunities, and you can figure out your own way through it. Um, One of the things we've talked about before is that you're able to blend not just your love of writing and games, but how you get to spend a certain amount of your time on your core passion, which is schmutz. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess I grew up near the seaside, and I've ended up here. I'm speaking to you from Hastings. On the right day, the wind still just about the blows the noise of arcades this way. But yeah, I fell in love with arcade early on because just about I caught the tail end of that era when the best games were technically more impressive at the arcade. And I also, I mentioned the skate park earlier. You can skate your own, go to the skate park. You can play games on your own and go to the arcade. I just love being, I don't know, I yo-yo a lot, both as a grown-up and a kid, and I love going to the community events there. So yes, something about arcade and then falling for that genre shmups, that ridiculous niche, right? Um, yeah, that's always been there on the shelves lining me. That's always been a core passion. And that's something that's really changed with games. It's impacted my career in a lovely way, but I hope all opportunities in games is right. We all know games have got bigger, audience sizes, sales, revenues, all of those things. Great. But games have got broader, like the types of audiences, the types of games, the ways they're made. So yeah, I was speaking only last night to a mate from down this way from outside of games, and he asked me the question I now dread, like, what's going on in games? I thought, 20 years ago when I started, games wasn't as broad as I've just described. I remember my first ever, it wasn't paid, it was work experience at the Brighton Argus. I got to review Football Manager in 2004, and I shouldn't be reviewing Football Manager. Like I don't know enough about the real game to have done that bit. You used to have to be this generalist, and there used to be enough going on that you could kind of be aware of it. But I really feel games like music, right? There's opera and techno and punk and metal and pop and hip hop. And I feel being a games expert or games writer today, games journalist today is like having to cover all of that breadth. So when this friend asked me, what's going on in games? I feel like someone might ask, what's going on in music? Covering every genre and space, right? But so yes, there's a slight challenge when I'm meant to assert I know everything going on in games because decreasingly possible. But the nice thing about that is there's space to, I was going to say, indulge in my niches, right? Like I started out 100% games journalism. Now journalism's 20% of my work, and I might be doing a consulting gig or another, and different. I can move around, and then maybe I get a better paid bit of work, and then I can indulge in something less well paid and interesting. Oh yeah, on my journalism, I've kind of become, I do games industry trade and game tech stuff, and then shmups and arcade culture, right? Like there's been a shmup renaissance, but it's not exactly, do you know what I mean? 20 years ago, I would not have dreamed of like looking at my boring Excel spreadsheet and Google Sheets doc of invoices and going, whoa, like a large percentage of them are writing about this tiny niche I adore, like this niche I share going to the arcade and those kind of things. So, yeah, I really feel there's more. I could have answered this question much more briefly. The increasing breadth in what games are and what they offer offers this lovely opportunity to specialize. And if you also happen to build a career that's kind of a sort of wonky modular system of doing all these different bits and pieces, you really can pivot to some work that's more self-indulgent, some work that's more practical, that kind of thing. So yeah, I really feel blessed that again, I guess I've not thought of this broad path I've walked down affords me such a variety of experiences from like, yeah, getting to, do an interview with a game developer as a childhood hero of an arcade game that profoundly set me on a certain path to, yeah, getting involved with things that are far outside of my comfort zone and experience. So yeah, it's been wonderful. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it's great. It's really fascinating to hear like your story and your journey. I absolutely love it. So I think sort of games in general is very supportive of a journey like that. It's
Yeah.
really lovely. And one of the things recently you posted up a little post on LinkedIn, and you mentioned you'd had some hard times and you'd really struggled. And the games industry is kind of what pulled you through it. And I think many of us in the industry can relate, right? We all go through difficult things, and often people are fighting battles that no one else knows about. Like people
Yeah.
go through really hard times. But the games industry, we have good people. We have really, really lovely people. And it's like they say 6 degrees of separation, but I swear it's like 1 or 2 in games. Like everybody kind of knows everybody, and we've all got each other's backs and we all support each other. And I've felt the same, like my friends have kept me going from games. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your experience with that.
Yeah, I really feel that. I kind of want to state that, some people watching, for people not listening, here I am with my like male white privilege, right? So I have had a privileged experience, and sort of to recognize I'm really encouraged by the games industry journey. I was reading a LinkedIn post yesterday about welcoming more people, an event for people from like working class and low income backgrounds. So I just sort of want to, is this too much for a podcast? I'm maybe still working on gender and sexuality stuff myself, but in general, I have enjoyed privilege. So it feels important to say that at the start. At the same time, yeah, I guess I have had, I got a PTSD diagnosis from childhood. Recent care experiences, both my parents being their carer and having to step away from games. There's been some tough times. I have well, I've got my children as blood relatives, but otherwise I have one distant uncle. I don't have a family support network in any way. And it's been that way for a fair old while. So that's kind of not a complaint. But I have really had a family support network in the games industry. Like, I'm not particularly emotionally expressive, and I can feel the welling up starting a little bit. But yeah, I have had this place where I've been able to be open about, and from the off, no, that was 20 years, for many, many years, being open about anxiety affecting my work, about likely neurodivergence, about struggles, about how becoming a carer took over my life and really removed me from everything. You know, I spent about 8 months in one building, barely leaving, kind of thing. Yeah, these difficult times have meant I have sometimes had to move deadlines, or I have broken down in, not many times, but I have been in tears on a work call. All those kind of things. I have felt like I have not been as consistent or stable as an ideal freelance contributor would be. And all I've had is love and patience and warmth and understanding and a hell of a lot of empathy, to be honest. You know, I think the games industry is one where you can be open, and perhaps that, you know, be open about your struggles, be open about your life experiences. I guess for a lot of people, you know, I'm doing something different. They inform the games people are making, right? We do. This is all around a medium that is not always, but often significantly informed by personal stories and personal experiences. Perhaps that's what's behind this. But yeah, I've just found games this welcoming. Do I want to? I don't quite want to say refuge, but this place where being imperfect, having mental health stuff that can affect even your work, yeah, the kindness I've had, the deadline extensions I've had, the encouragement, it's been, uh, yeah. I'm not saying like, good, if you've got problems, come to the games, and like, go to a therapist, talk to people, do all those things. If you've got a family that are good, wicked. Um, but yeah, I've had, you know, really kind support, so much patience. I've felt I have found an industry where leaning into yourself and being distinct and being open and vulnerable is kind of celebrated and welcomed.
Mm.
And I've had really good things around me aside from games, but yeah, like, games has been a place for me to personally blossom while being really accepting when they could have said, "You weren't going to get that working on time. We won't use you again." Right? Nothing of the like. And here I am on a podcast getting to talk about it, right? Or, you know, when a CEO has stayed on a call and we've shared some difficult experience while I'm doing a bit of freelance writing that's been profoundly affecting, to a client giving me some therapy when I was only a freelancer, which started me on that journey, right? It was literally a copywriting gig that first got me. They were like, well, we give our employees therapy as an extra thing. We're going to give that to you. Yeah. And, you know, years on, I'm paying for my own, and happily so. But yeah, I've been really I've been really accepted and really allowed to be myself and really supported. And yeah, the games industry has been, I haven't had much for family, only child, no nieces, nephews. The games industry, along with some childhood friends, the games industry has been the closest I've had to a family, which is wild to think. And yeah, the acceptance of difference, again, and that's where I sort of return to my point of my privilege. You know, I don't want to, I think that's, I think lots of us are wonderfully supported, but I realise, you know, there's also stuff that games industry needs to. I don't want to be too idealistic, but wow, like, yeah, I can't believe the experience I've had. You know,
Yeah, I mean, the games industry isn't perfect, but it certainly is one where you can be more open, as you've said. And I really appreciate you being so open there, because I think as we get more like experienced and senior in our careers and we become more comfortable with who we are,
yeah,
and whether it's our flaws, whether it's like, you know, if we have struggles or mental health issues, I think as we become more secure in ourselves, we become more comfortable talking about it.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
more we talk about whether it is mental health or neurodivergence or like sexuality or
yeah,
any of
yeah,
this stuff, it really helps other people feel like they can be seen
yeah.
and heard. So if someone's just starting out in the industry, conversations like this will hopefully let them know you're welcome here and
Yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 absolutely. You know, yeah, I've yeah, I've been so welcomed in that way, including imperfections. You know, neurodivergence and likely neurodivergence. I think I had my last meeting with the neurodivergence team in 2022, and they said, "Wait for the letter about the next meeting." Here I am. So still, in self-diagnosis. But yeah, I have facets of my life have on paper negatively impacted my ability to do my work, and that's never held me back, not because of me being fantastic, but because of the industry being so great. So yeah, if that young person is going in thinking, oh, but this and this and this and this, like, they can be struggles. You're allowed to find it hard, but they really don't need to be barriers. Like I say, experiences I've had and the wiring of my brain and things quite literally have made some elements of the work I do less. Yeah, I don't want to say. I hope, I've been writing for 20 years. I hope I can do that. But yeah, neurodivergence and deadlines haven't always been perfect, and it hasn't stopped me thriving. God, and clients I can deliver on time. No, I really can. I really can. Like, I do hit my step. But yeah, when traumatic events or becoming a mess has,
Mm.
how to put it, all the stuff I thought should be, well, that means you can't have that career in games, have not been a barrier because of acceptance and open-mindedness and understanding from the industry. You sure as shit don't have to be perfect, because I am far from it.
No, I don't think any of us can be perfect. We're all flawed in our own strange ways. One of the things you mentioned was that, when you were freelance, like your contractor at the time, like they helped you with therapy and that was your first chance of therapy. And that is absolutely brilliant that they offered you that.
Yeah.
But I think that's also a good reminder to people that, if you are going through a tough time, check your like employee
Yeah.
support
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
tools, because many companies do offer this, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, because if you can speak to your employer and say, "Look, I'm struggling," and you can get help, they're gonna
yeah,
wanna support you because it'll help you do your
yeah.
job better anyway, so
Yeah, that
definitely
in
do
fact, that is something that, I've kind of projected this bumbling about being accepted, and there's a massive degree of truth to that. But actually, yeah, I went through a very traumatic experience with my mum's care and other people being kind of coercive in that scenario and so on. And I basically had to speak to adult social care and tell the same difficult story over and over. But it did sort of unlock this ease. I think when my dad had a head injury and I used to talk to him in intensive care while I was unconscious for months, I kind of had these challenging life experiences, but they did teach me, just like, be open, be aware of trauma dumping, those kind of things. Like, there's a time and a place. Um, but yeah, I kind of learnt this for all, long before I started working on other things. I did learn this. Fuck it, I'm going to be honest about this. And that's only ever been welcomed and encouraged. And I've definitely, yeah, being a contractor or even an employee at other places, been like too meek to take benefits. And yeah, again, it's this really human industry. And I guess if you are frank to an employer about that and they're not supportive, I mean, that's quite a nice way of finding out about a potential pivot in your career journey. I'm not encouraging kind of sudden, sudden bailing on good jobs and that kind of thing. But yeah, I have just found this. I have found being open about it has exposed me to support, and this is not a place where mental health or neurodivergence or other things are frowned upon. They are, yeah, really, really understood. And yeah, so yes, there is nothing wrong with struggling. I do it plenty. And you don't always have to speak up or share. There's nothing wrong with reaching out. And the games industry, for me and for many people I know, has been wonderful in that regard. You mentioned that LinkedIn post, and it was just, hey, I've been in 20 years in games. I wanted to thank people. And many of the people commenting, I was like, whoa, things they've said to me on a work call have like helped me and stayed with me for years in a positive way and stuff. So yeah, and also, there are so many amazing groups and meetups in games where you don't have to necessarily speak to your employer. If that can be difficult or not the right time, but there are people and groups and meetups in games there to listen, and that's amazing. It's such a
Yeah.
privilege.
I think the social groups are sort of really underrated because they're lovely. And like I've only recently found like there's the games meet up here in Edinburgh, and it's just a small group and they meet in the
Yeah,
pub every couple of weeks. But you just go, you have a blather, you find out what people are
yeah,
working
yeah,
on.
yeah,
It's how you make friends and like build those connections in the industry as well. And if you can get some advice or learn some advice from somebody else,
Yeah.
it's so
And
nice.
and there's really wicked specific groups like ADHD in games who meet up at Develop Brighton, but also Develop Brighton being a UK game, they're probably one of the larger, more significant UK games industry conferences. But also at that, there's the Develop Conference Skate, and on the first day, a load of us all swim in the sea, and those are playful experiences where I've also had profound conversations. And yeah, you don't necessarily need to go to those specific groups that help with certain things are really helpful. But yeah, it honestly, like, and also just to pivot to like your career thriving, I have been doing the developed sea swim. I'm not a profoundly, in fact, the first year I swam too far and got in quite a panic swimming back and became an RNLI crew volunteer as a result. There's a profound experience. Won't go down that diversion yet, but I started turning up and joining in with things like swimming in the sea and da da da. And it's just like, oh, you're part of the crew. Come on in. And like, yeah, those things have really opened up my career and my network. Like when you're like out at sea, really cold, thinking, we've got to make it back to the keynote. You're like, but I'm having a really interesting conversation about an opportunity with someone I've met in the sea. It's a weird thing to say, but it's happened to me numerous times. And maybe your thing isn't going to the sea. Maybe it's going to there's five-a-side football. That, I'm trying to think of things far out of my culture and that kind of thing. But yeah, the opportunity to meet the people, express yourself, and network by joining in. We are a medium about play, right? Not entirely. There are important games that kind of move away from pure play, but playfulness and play and creativity and creative collaboration. And so I think you do find these communities of playful people. Like I've never had to be buttoned up sensible. I've never had to. Perhaps I did it early on in my career, but I've learned turning off me and formalizing me, as well as being something I don't enjoy, holds my career back. Whereas leaning into me and being me thrusts it forward. And yes, formal networking events are good, but going along to I remember the first time I went to those kind of more playful things and was so nervous. And in fact, you form kind of much more meaningful memories and networks than necessarily going to a networking event.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's funny you said that did the more sort of button up and be more formal,
Yeah,
like, early in your career, because I did the same, and I felt like I started to do that a little bit in my previous role when I was, like, a co-founder, and we were getting investment and meeting investors, and you think, "Oh, I've got to go corp
go
goth for
sensible
this
mode.
one. I've got to wear the fancy black dress instead of just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
casual."
yeah, yeah,
Right? But I think when I started this company, like for me, mine's Goth Boss Studios, and I did that on purpose because I was like, do you know, I want to be able to walk into any event being 100% me
yeah,
and not be judged for who I am, and people will expect it. And what I love is that as two people who've been in the games industry, I've been, 17 years, you're 20.
yeah,
And look at the pair of us. We are so authentically us
yeah,
on
yeah,
video.
yeah.
Like we're not dressing corpo.
No,
We're not being what other people would think or
yeah.
want.
I mean,
We're
I've got a very stupid haircut under this hat, half a shaved head. Who has that? Like, I like that it's not even meant to be a good haircut. It's a fun one. But yeah, and those, I don't know, me always having a flipping yo-yo with me and a skateboard. Is that maybe it? No, and I was going to be playful about like being in your mid-40s. Like, that's never been framed as tragic. It's always been celebrated. Um, yeah, like I am who I am, and spending 20 years in a place that encourages that has allowed me to be more of who I am.
Mm.
And that has made me feel happier regardless of work and made work thrive. And I don't know, maybe I'm jumping to, and there's this massive practical gain. It's taken me years, but I'm mostly, as a freelancer, I always collaborate, but I'm a one person company. I don't have a boss, like pointing to myself, this idiot is my boss. I say that playfully. But I used to do presenteeism for myself.
Right.
Like, I used to, got to do the 9 to 5 structure. I should probably do 8 till 6. And like, yeah, I like forcing. That's been a profound change in me that sums up a lot. Is I used to, and we all have to do this sometimes. We all have to tolerate situations or even support situations that aren't our jam. But I spent ages trying to fit me around the world, and it's only been now. It's like, finding the conditions for who I am to thrive. And my hours, a 9 to 5 doesn't work. I wanted to do 4-day weeks, but it's a freelance. You've got to be there for clients. I tend to do
Mm.
I do 5-day weeks with 2-hour lunch breaks, to be honest. I sometimes finish really early. Sometimes I start really late because I'm doing something with my kids and finding myself into working into the evening bit. But I used to do all that and struggle and, oh, I'm failing because I'm not fitting the mold of success. And then being
Mm.
like, oh, actually doing it my own way, from hours to rates to motivations to those kind of things. Yeah, like doing what works for me rather than grinding to fit into a system turns out to have been really accepted in games because there's all kinds of people doing their own different version of it. But yeah, like I say, I used to do presenteeism in a one person company and just be unhappy and less productive and less creative, fighting to do it how I thought you were meant to. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Presenteeism is such a trap. It really is. And I'm really intrigued to dive into that a bit more about what you were saying about work hours because
mhm,
I don't know about you, but for me, I do the same in golf. But it's like, yeah, I'll work a full day, working day for clients. Like when
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
needed, I will match their hours
yeah,
happily.
yeah, yeah,
But when I'm working for myself, I tend to find that I work very intensely in short bursts. So,
yeah,
like today, I'm recording this podcast. I'll probably edit it straight after. I've got a few other calls, and I'm going to clock off at like 2 p.m. because
yeah. And would you have
that's
felt
the way
guilty?
I
I know
work.
I'm not meant to be asking questions, but that's traditionally I'm meant to feel guilty about such
I
things,
used
like, or
to. I
naughty.
used to. Yeah, I was raised to be like a people pleaser, perfectionist,
Right.
like A-star student, where you feel like you've got to always be on, always be grafting constantly. And I am a grafter. I really
Yeah,
work hard, but I
yeah,
think
yeah,
many of us, it sounds like you're similar. You do a lot in a short burst, and then you
yeah.
want to relax and enjoy your day after that.
Yeah, 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 like, yeah, yeah, I definitely, yeah, I happen to, I'm here in my home office. I rent a little co-working space because that works for my brain, and that's by the beach. And sometimes I think, do you know what? I'm going to go and spend longer than I should sat on the beach because the work isn't happening at the moment, and then come back and have a massive burst in the second half of the day. And and like you say, it's really important. I don't want to feel like, oh, you can just totally be how you want all the time. Like, there's a massive capacity for that, but sometimes I have to match client hours. Sometimes I have a day that's less productive than I planned and I have to push it a bit more. But also, being kind to yourself, allowing yourself to stop, realizing that then, okay, work smart, not hard. Like, there's a bit that, a bit hackneyed, but yeah, like working out the working conditions that work for you. Like, I have no consistency with a schedule. I don't say I do these hours on these days. I get like, you know, various versions of crunch and overwork are not big or clever, but sometimes my creative writing space is from like 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. And as long as that's not forced, I guess, again, I've had a client in a different country where I do have to do the call at midnight. So sometimes
Mhm.
it is a necessity, but yeah. And yeah, what am I thinking? That comes with responsibility. I've got school runs with these. So being a parent doesn't make me special. We've all got different blends of responsibility, and being a parent is not a superior route. But I do have to blend what I'm talking about with responsibility. But also, sometimes I clock off early and go for a bike ride with my kids instead. And I'm not going to regret the fact that, oh, I could have earned 100 quid more or spent more time with my children. And yeah, there's responsibility. There's delivering the work. Like, I'm kind of thinking, like, God, clients listening to this, and deadlines and working structure. People keep having me back. I deliver the work. I work hard. I like to work hard, and like, sometimes it's panicked and stressful. Sometimes it runs away from me. I don't want to project this. Just each day I do what I want, but I'm kind to myself, and don't no longer I no longer demean myself for struggling to fit a structure which has emerged, the 9 to 5 and so on, that isn't right. I don't thrive under those conditions, and I do better work listening to myself and having a bit of kindness. I mean, for example, after this podcast record, I could definitely dive into some writing I need to do. I will hit the deadline, client, but we're talking about some mental health stuff. So I'm going to allow myself a 30-minute hour walk after this
Good.
because I could dive straight into the work. And technically that would mean starting sooner and having more time. But giving myself that walk will probably help my productivity, and I will be happier and doing better work at the end of the day. And yeah, And
Yeah.
I'm suddenly realizing it's taken like years of work on actually being confident enough to say that listening to myself and looking after myself is valid, because I literally didn't believe that in my heart not that long ago.
I
It's
think
quite
many of us
sad.
are raised not to think that way and to
Yeah,
think that you're a failure if you need a break. Like, it took me many years, this is literally just in recent years, to learn that there's this like spoons analogy. I don't know if you've heard
yeah,
of this, and
yeah,
that's how, right? So it's like, imagine your perfect day, you've got 10 spoons, you've got all your energy.
yeah,
And some days you'll wake up and you've only got 2 spoons and you're just like, oh, I've really not got it. And you can try it all your best, but you've just not got it.
mm,
And what I think we've got a problem as a society is that we still expect people to give 10 spoons, even on a 2-spoon day. Like
yeah,
you're expected to do that. And that is how I often ended up burning out because I put too much in every day. And I've had
mm,
3 major burnouts in my career.
yeah,
I'm determined not to do it again. It's not happening. I'm going on record. I'm not burning out again.
yeah,
But it's hard, right? And I think taking care of yourself, one of the things we talked about previously was about having holidays. Like, God, they're a novelty when you're a freelancer,
yeah,
but they're
yeah,
so important. So
yeah. Yeah, I have tradition, holidays were difficult experiences when I was young, plus being freelance, plus my previous less than healthy but understandable habit of burying my head in work when times got hard. I am really rubbish at holiday. I've got to work, got to work, got to work, hide in the work. Da, da, da. Just here in the UK at the time of recording, the UK school summer holidays have finished, and me and my family stopped for 3 weeks and spent time together. This is such a ridiculous thing to say at 45. I came out like, oh, that's why people have holidays.
mm,
It makes you feel better. And for myself and my family, I think we've all been on different journeys in different ways. And actually stopping my therapy journey and learning who I am and leaning into who I am and kind of being more confident with my vibe and stuff. Until very recently, it was quite academic, brilliant therapist, brilliant. I've loved the journey, amazing support. Spending me and my partner supporting each other through it. It's been amazing, but all the progress was still academic. Like, oh right, I'm a confident person now. How do they act? And then I stopped for a holiday, and it all came in place. And I'm kind of like, we're not even talking that long ago, just living it, and it's amazing. If you'd have talked to me 4 years ago, I'd been, oh yeah, the improvement,
mm,
but that can continue. And there is my work, and yeah, I had some major burnouts, and yeah, we were like, oh, I'm doing like 12-hour days for 19 days straight, and it's not big or clever, and it's still happening. But yeah, I have found like doing my work and self-improvement don't come at each other's expense and actually really inform each other. And that's quite amazing, considering it just started with buying Amiga magazines as a way to get free game demos. Like, I didn't plan all this, and I guess I followed my heart or what is it? It's yeah, I don't believe in like fate or some divine plan existing for me. Just getting involved and chucking myself out there, and then yeah, this amazing fortuitous circle of like self improvement, and my work's getting better, and I'm enjoying it more, and I'm meeting. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. So speaking about your work and like we started out talking about the Amiga magazine and like
Yeah,
game reviews and that's how you got into your
yeah,
journey.
yeah.
Let's pivot a bit into talking a little bit about your work and what you do because I'd love people to hear more about sort of the kind of things you do and if anybody's interested in working with you, like how that process works. I know one of the things you do is mock reviews for people. So I'd love to hear like what that means
Yeah,
for someone who's not heard of it and how it works.
yeah, that's one of my favourite bits of work at well, just in general in my career. So I guess I have done reviews for years. It used to be my bread and butter, like grinding away doing reviews. And I'm either spoiled or privileged or have like earned this thing of like I do reviews when I find a game really interesting and want to share it with the world. But yeah, once you have done a fair bit of reviewing work, the mock reviewing process, there's a few versions, but most typically you're sent a game when it's 90% complete, sometimes more than that, sometimes less. And you're asked to write a fairly long form review, but perhaps longer than a bit longer than a traditional word count. But it's not my personal review. It is a predictive, average, typical review to predict press responses. Um, and then because there's so many different types of press, I always think where I did one with a game that was kind of abhorrently violent, but in a technically impressive way, there was a chance for 2 reactions from the press to that. So as well as submitting the review, you submit for me a few thousand words of notes, some context, and then you might jump on calls with the development team after. And you traditionally, or most, the kind of prime purpose on paper of a mock review is often to inform marketing and PR and that kind of thing. But more and more, I find myself doing them earlier in a game, when you're earlier in a game, maybe when a game's 75%, 50% complete, um, and you're talking about onboarding and player journey. I guess being that external pair of eyes the developer hasn't. So I've ended up like helping rewrite the onboarding copy for a game, or getting involved in getting involved in kind of talking to designers about how they. It's not. I'm not suddenly doing game design or anything, but contributing to the refining of a game. And then you might do a mock review where again you get a vertical slice. So not a million miles from a demo, but just one complete bit because they haven't built the rest of the game. And that might be for a publisher or an investor or the studio itself trying to make decisions. And so, yeah, and it's really cool. You get to see games in all kinds of incomplete states. You get to have these amazing conversations with creative people. More and more I get assigned ones. You have to, I'm being a bit cautious because you have to sign these, in this case, it's totally understandable and right. You have to sign these, I will not talk about the game kind of thing. And I've got all these games that aren't out yet. I've been doing it recently. But yeah, it comes from knowing the media landscape, knowing the fundamentals of game design. And I guess, my time at Develop magazine as editor and so on there. So it's writing and interviewing people about that. Kind of understanding games' place in culture and how they responded. And just being really frank, it's one of my best paid bits of work. And I'm not motivated by money, but I perhaps was early on so not motivated, like proudly not motivated by money, that I sometimes missed opportunities. But yeah, mock reviewing work is probably 3 times as well paid as the journalism. But then if I have a couple of days on a mock review, I'm like, oh, now I can get involved in this really exciting project that's really meaningful or personally engaging that isn't as well paid. Or I've done mocks for a much cheaper rate for a team of 2 because that team of 800 have just given me a mock. And yeah, it's mock reviews. I adore it. I went to university in the late 90s, so of course I did a media studies degree, as was the law then. But actually, I'm like, oh god, yeah, it's just really rewarding work, helping and diving. It blends journalism and writing and knowing games, place, and culture with a little bit of getting involved with game writing or consulting on game design and that kind of thing. And it's so weird when you do. Oh, I suggest you I guess I can be playful in all contexts, including on those calls after a mock review, and that technically they're consulting, but you suggest something in a playful way, and then it pops up in the game or as a marketing line or whatever. You're like, oh well, yeah, and the appreciation you get from developers and excitement. I adore that process, and it's not a career start thing. I think I was probably my first was 2012, but it was probably 2020 before I was doing them really regularly. And then I see some people who've been in games for 5 years and managed to do it. So you can definitely do it, but it comes from it comes from embracing more and more games, and it is a really wonderful, rewarding process. And also, I can play a video game for pleasure till 2 a.m. and I've ended up being a deadline, and I've got to play this game till 2 in the morning, and that's not right. I don't know, yeah, but yeah, it's that's been a great pleasure and one of my most rewarding bits of work. And yeah, it being better paid is a really wonderful opportunity. I could be like, I'm just going to do mock reviews now, and it's like, oh no, I can carry on diversifying my work and the amounts I earn.
Mm.
And I guess it is higher paid for a reason. You're being paid for the years of experience. I think it's like when you pay a tattooist, you're not paying them for the hour that they tattoo you. You're paid for the 30 years they've learned getting good enough. Says someone with quite a lot of bad tattoos done on kitchen floors. But
I feel like tattoos are standard for the games industry. So many of us
yeah,
have got them. I think honestly, that all sounds really, really cool about the mock reviews.
yeah,
And like you said, you've got so many years of experience in games that means you can have this kind of holistic approach where you can look at the writing and the editorial side, but you
yeah,
can also look at the game design. One question I had there though is, you mentioned some people come to you at like 90% complete, which is
yeah,
kind of late in the process to
yeah.
really. make any meaningful
Yeah,
changes.
I think that those cases would be where it's more informing marketing copy and how they present the game to the world,
Right.
or Steam store page copy and
That
things.
makes
But
sense.
yeah, and it depends on the scope and stuff. You know, indie game made by a tiny team at 80% is perhaps different from a AAA game. Right,
Yeah.
I'm not claiming that when I do it on a AAA game, they're like, yes, we're going to reinvent the level design of this huge game. But yeah, and it. Yeah, and you'll make what you're. Sorry, I'm going slightly off track here. Surprise, surprise. That thing of diversifying your career further diversifies your career,
Mhm.
because as you start to do more different things, they all inform each other. And it's amazing how some work on a mock can inform how I choose content for a stage, or someone speaking on a stage can inform how I do a bit of copyright. Yeah, yeah. There's. I'm not wording it very well there, but e- every bit of the, all the elements of what bring about making and releasing and covering a game and all those things all intersect, right? And the more different you do, the more different you can do, and they're
Yeah.
not totally isolated. You know, they all every bit of work I do informs every bit of work I do, however different they are. And so yeah, I think if you do go down that path of like it, like you can feel like, oh, I'm not specializing. You're like, no, I am. I'm like specializing this really broad way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're specializing in games. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
it is a specialty, but you've just got lots of different skills and tools in your
yeah.
toolkit
I think
within
that's every
games.
piece of work that takes you out of a clearly defined role informs that clearly defined role and expands what you you know further expands what you can do.
Yeah, yeah, and what I loved about what you said about your design reviews is how I think as freelancers, we can afford sometimes to offer different pricing to people. So, if you really want to work with a small indie and really, really help them out, you can offer a bit of a discount to them. And it's really lovely that we're in a position where we can do that. Like, again, that's kind of a privileged position of getting plenty of
Yeah,
work in to
yeah,
offset.
it's privileged, and I guess it's earned, right? Like we have
Yeah.
been working for all these years to, like, and but yeah, I still that's another thing, and I don't know if this is a strength or a weakness, if there's something to celebrate or work on, maybe both. I still feel new to it, and I'm
Mhm.
not. Like when someone says definitely the word veteran, I'm like, what? And when someone says like expert, I think I used that word earlier, and I cringe when I do, but. And is it that feeling new to it's great because I'm wide-eyed and eager to learn and don't assume I know, or it has that sometimes held me back because I should, not feel awkward about saying I know what I'm doing, and I like, yeah. But I still feel like wide-eyed and excited and new, and that's a lovely feeling, actually.
Yeah.
Is it a strength or a weakness? 20 years in, a bit of both, probably.
I feel like the games industry's changed so much though. Like since you and I first met, I mean, if you look back at where it was back then, people were still making Flash games, right? It was
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. I mean,
long ago.
I've still got a folder over there. I won't. You can see how messy those shelves are. I won't start pulling them apart now. But from when I used to get sent print press releases and printed photos
Oh wow.
to then go in the magazine and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was when was it, 20 years ago. The internet was around and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, getting discs and printed photos and printed press releases through the post. And we weren't talking about live ops and user acquisition and engagement and retention,
No,
right? And so,
it's so
yeah, perhaps
changed.
actually in a medium that thunders forward and is defined by change and progress, it's natural to constantly feel new and quite a good attitude, right? Because there's definitely always something to learn.
Yeah, there's always something to learn, but I think we have to be careful to not fall into the trap of imposter syndrome with it because,
Yeah,
you're very good at what you do. And I think, like, yeah, veteran, it makes you feel old, right? Like,
yeah,
people say it to me sometimes. I'm like, really? I don't want to, don't
yeah,
want to say that. But I think, you are an expert in
yeah,
games
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you are a veteran, sorry, but
Yeah,
both,
no,
we're
no, I
both on
have.
that
I like,
fence.
I guess some people listening are kind of like playfully pulled a cringe face then. But yeah, it's just really weird to me. It's really weird to me to think that I'm a veteran or expert. But yeah, imposter syndrome, it's been there as a trait for me, certainly. I certainly still, yeah, I guess when I do a lot of features writing, and when I did my, and I think I started reading Edge issue 2, and obviously, it's the very well written, the kind of, it was always a dream to get an Edge. And the moment I had an article in Edge, I was like, oh, they must have had someone pull out and they did blah, blah, blah. And, I haven't contributed them for a while, but many, many, many features in, I have to like fight the voice that's saying, "You didn't earn this, it happened by mistake." Right? Like, yes, he did. But
Yeah.
there, multiple voices. Yeah, imposter syndrome. I just deeply understand it. But there's kind of, I feel imposter syndrome in the games industry is like, what is it? I don't know. I was going to say like imposter syndrome at a house party you've been invited to, but do you know what I mean? Like, I'm in this lovely, warm, welcoming place that's giving me this work and saying we'd love you to try this, and like, it's, you don't need to feel imposter syndrome, but you're probably surrounded by people that deeply understand that.
Yeah, because I think probably 90% of the people in the room have got or had
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. It's so common. So just to wrap up on the mock reviews side of
Oh yeah,
things,
yeah. Sorry.
if
Yeah.
there's anybody listening or watching that would like to work with you or ask you how to do that, what's the best way to get in touch with someone like you? Because I imagine many people, aside from sending out a press release, don't really know how to reach out to
Yeah.
journalists or writers.
God, yeah, it used to be easy when I was on things like Twitter, but I mean, I'm pretty easily found on LinkedIn under my name, and I have accept. I used to kind of think I was a bit too corporate old LinkedIn, but it's really good for conversations. And it's how we're having this podcast, right? Having this podcast, but yeah, I posted if you reached out, and here we are. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I do use Blue Sky, and honest, I'm not quickly calling up the Blue Sky thing to 100% check my I am at Spadgy Otter, SPADGY_OTA. I'm from Arcade. You have to have a 3-letter handle. So yeah, you can find me there, but LinkedIn's probably the best place, or staggering about games industry events. I think there's something really important actually there is really do go up to, I early on in my career was very timid about approaching people. Like the first games conferences I went to were almost quite lonely experiences. And it's like you are just in a room or building with people who share the same passion. Um, and yeah, so yeah, sorry, if people want to find me, I'd definitely say LinkedIn. I won't just list my email address here. LinkedIn. I'm the Will Freeman in the games industry. But yeah, I kind of sort of made that distracted aside about coming up to me at an industry event. But if you're new in your career, never hesitate to do that. And I think it's kind of why I'm on this podcast. People love sort of passing it on. I've been so supported and encouraged and being given chances. And it is an industry where people do want to, in general, or on the whole, in my experience, people do really want to support you. So yeah,
Mhm.
getting involved and going and I mean, that's kind of all my career has been doing, is having enthusiastic conversations that turn into writing.
Yeah, I think that is very valuable, speaking about like people wanting to give back and wanting to help, whether that's helping the next generation that's just coming up, like the juniors and the graduates, or just people that are at the more senior end, but they're maybe struggling with like leadership. Like, yeah, people like Will, people like me, we're here to help. We're at that stage of wanting to give back. So do come and ask
Yeah.
us questions.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, it's such a wicked privilege to be able to do that, right? And I do, yeah, I had some real moments. I can remember my first ever piece to Pocket. Was it my first paid review? It was like a J2ME mobile, like Grand Theft Auto ripoff. And John Jordan at Pocket Gamer in 2005 or something took the time to give me, absolutely tore the article apart and was so helpful. Or when, yeah, people have kind of become unofficial mentors, or people have really like embraced me in a project, that kind of thing. Like it's, and I love to do that now. It's so wicked to be able to pass it on. And, so I have done mentoring and things like that. There's so many opportunities like that to keep an eye out for as well. Like, yeah, it's, I think it comes from, it's a collaborative industry. Of course, there are games made by one people, but in general, games, as well as being defined by play and so on, are defined by people with different creative and practical skill sets coming together. So if making games is definably collaborative, I feel collaboration is a defining spirit of the games industry itself. And there's all kinds of different versions of what collaboration can mean. But people, and I guess, yeah, I wasn't necessarily talking about collaboration when it's talk to people, get involved, but it's an industry of like, let's share ideas, let's have conversations, let's come together, let's like people doing things together. And that's understanding that as a defining spirit of games makes it perhaps a little easier to just walk up to people, get talking. Like, that's kind of all I've done, is be enthusiastic and love talking too much about games.
No, I think we all love talking about games. Honestly, it's lovely to hear you talk so passionately about it because, the industry's been in a lot of turmoil and I've seen a lot of people
Yeah.
leave in the industry and it's easy to lose your passion when times get hard. So it's lovely to see that after all these years you are still super passionate about it.
Yeah, I do absolutely adore them. Like, I do still go to the arcade, right? I do still get, yeah, but I think perhaps, it's recognized privilege again, but perhaps that having a career that isn't focused on one thing, one is very sustainable as different things have shifted in the work people need or what work is being paid for or what work's available. Doing a lot of different things allows you to kind of organically and on the fly adapt. But it also means maybe if I used to love doing game reviews. I still love doing game reviews, but I used to like getting a game through the post, playing it early, writing it up. And I'm like, if I was just still doing game reviews after 20 years, I think I'd be driven wild. Whereas I still love game reviews because I do loads of other things that aren't game reviews. So I
Oh,
think if it feels to a listener like a multifaceted, multi-role, broad career works, it's sustainable during difficult times, it's rewarding, and is it allows you to be kind to yourself and shift, work-life balance, and it allows you to stay passionate about the thing you're doing because I haven't done too much of one thing. So
yeah. I
yeah.
think that's really wise advice. That's super helpful for a
If
lot of
it
people.
works for you, because there is not, and actually being an employee is a good way of learning. There's a load of skills that are
Yeah,
nothing to do with games, right? Just collaboration, and I don't want to say
yeah,
organization, but like working with people and being part of a team and all those kind of things. So there's loads of validity from it. When I took employment early in my career, in brief spurts, admittedly, that really informed my career. And two, maybe that's better for your brain and your makeup.
yeah,
Again, like I have found, rather than trying to grind to fit myself around a certain way of doing things, I've kind of instead pursued a way of doing things that are like conditions for me to thrive. But that's my conditions to thrive. And if a list, follow your heart is all I'm saying. No, but like it's not about doing exactly what I've done or exactly what you have done, but listening to what works for you. And employment works for some people, right?
yeah. Yeah, and it's just that, you've got to pay the bills, you got to eat, right? So it's doing what works for you in the best way possible.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you do have to do work that's outside your passion zone or, yeah, there is, I think that's it, like being confident to go with the conditions that allow you to thrive and also being able to adapt when you have to conditions that aren't perfect, right? I wouldn't have got my career being like, I'm going to do it my way and that's the only way. Like I've had to adapt and so on, but yeah, again, when you've got lots of different ways and working and different types of client and different types of project, it's perhaps, yes, what am I saying? Like, it's never felt like adapting to survive. It's felt like trying lots of things. But yeah, it's not like I've done 20 years of just doing exactly what I want my way. But I've had a huge percentage of that, and sometimes, had to make the rent.
Yeah. Well, you've had an amazing career. Well, it's been so lovely to hear about like all of it and your process and what you're up to at the minute. I guess let's wrap up with something really fun because you've mentioned like I know we can't talk about the games that like you're NDA'd,
Mm.
but I would love to hear what game that's upcoming are you most excited about because you'll know more than many of us, I'm sure, what's coming up, what's looking good.
It's a strange one to answer because for all that talk of passion about games, so often I'm writing about like I guess loads of the things that really excite me, like the ways that at the moment, like there's a really cool concept, the skinification of fashion. Like I love the way games shape culture around them. So I'm not answering of the game here. I'm about to, but the way that games continue to shape around us. So the skinification of fashion is this idea that, guess what? Was a skateboarder listening to hardcore punk in the 90s. My skateboard's down there. I dress like this still, right? And there's this idea of subcultures, and you used to commit to the music and a certain political beliefs and a certain way of dressing for 20 years. I'm speaking to someone who's at Gothboss Studios, right? So maybe you know what I'm talking about. And now the skinification of fashion is the idea that young people are so used to skin switching in games and constantly trying different aesthetics that now the fashion cycle and even the production of fabrics and clothes is being not being slowed down, sped up really. Like people don't commit to a certain subculture or fashion for years. We have all these things like middle-aged lady core and clown core and all the cores which describe these aesthetics. So suddenly games are shaping high street fashion and identity and slowing down the greediness of fast fashion slash speeding it up because people want more outfits. But the idea and the way that games are shaping town planning and the music industry, like the fact that like getting into FIFA gets you more listens than a Spotify significant Spotify playlists and stuff. What really excites me, and I will give you some titles in a minute, is like Unreal and Unity used for real-time displays in concerts. Like they use game engines to make films and to make live experiences. And that's what really excites me about games is their continued like journey into shaping and influencing the world around us. But I'm going to pivot to also talking about games. I love the fact that now niches can really, really thrive. So we mentioned me loving shmups. There's been a bit of a renaissance, like if any Bullet Hell, where you get lots of bullets. The company, the studio that really came up with that were Toe Plan, and suddenly they're getting sequels to their games. I love Truxton, so Truxton Extreme is coming up. I adore that game, and I know that's going to be interesting to a fraction of people, but I absolutely adore into the trucking simulator space in the AAA and first person shooters, they're all valid genres. So for me, I'm getting excited about games like Truxton Extreme and various movements in the shmup space, and the fact that all these games are coming back and getting remade and getting sequels after 20 years gaps. But that's what excites me about games, is whatever you're into, there's an opportunity and there's creative stuff going on. So I hope that first half, but that is what excites me about games more than individual titles, is the way games shape the world around us and the way a term like game over becomes defining of political protest, or the way that, just games are seeping into every aspect of culture and really, in a really positive way, shaping the world around us. And then I love that I can say the game I'm most looking forward to is Truxton Extreme. Like, I love the original Truxton. Shout out to anyone who plays it. I'm going to get to write about it. I've already actually Eartheon, a recent shmup, the fact that I got to write, doing a feature and interviewing the developer, right? It doesn't only have to be about what's going on in the charts. Like, it's absolutely great. Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto, they're bringing money in, they're bringing talent in, they're thriving and succeeding, they're informing the cultural landscape, but no longer does what's interesting in the top of the charts a question. I don't know, what's your favorite game or what excites you can be something really niche, and yet I'm going to get to write about that and make it a bit of my work, and also import the full version from Japan and play it and hopefully speak to the developer and see this form I love moving forward. But it's not the same as me going, oh, this really cool indie studio is making this really cool, thoughtful like, I play games without storylines where it's 3 lives save the world, right? But that can exist, and that there's plenty of capacity for my passion for that niche. And that's the same of loads of other people who would suggest totally other different games. Was that an answer? It was an
Yeah,
answer because you
it
asked a
wasn't.
question and I
No, that was
said some
perfect.
words.
No, it was perfect because I had no idea what you were going to say, and the fact that you came up with that sort of, it was a little love letter to the games industry almost.
Yeah, I just love it. I love what the medium is. Do you know what I mean? That thing about like we're employing more architects because when you design an environment, it's a space for people to move through, but also architects are using game engines to plan out space, and NASA are using game engines to plot spaceships so they can move around them in VR, and they're also taking 360 controllers up because they're already proven. They've probably updated it. I interviewed NASA about that a while ago. I just said 360 controllers, but consumer games controllers are up in space. The point they made at the time, I remember, like, we're NASA, we're not going to learn how to make tires for the moon buggy. We're going to work with Michelin and the tire companies, right? And now when it comes to controllers, there's these ones that have been used by millions of people. So they're up orbiting in space, being used for really important work. The car dashboards are using game theory, right, to make driving more efficient and economical. I don't know, charities starting to use game jams. I've done some work with various game charities just using game jams and experiment to understand the medium, to use its power to engage, to forward their work. Like, I love individual titles. I've got rows of them right here, but I love what games are in the world. That's my answer. What am I excited about? What games are in the world? And that feels like a cop out, but it's really true. Like, games have this amazing capacity. There's nothing wrong with them entertaining. I like sometimes playing a mediocre game, like watching a crap film can be rewarding, right? Like, I'm not saying they all have to be high art or make a profound difference in the world, but they can do so many different things now, and it's really exciting. It's a really nice version of being overwhelmed.
No, I think that's a really beautiful answer because, yeah, games as an industry is really exciting. And I think we should end on that as a positive note because
Yeah.
it's such a lovely way just to wrap up like your passion for games and why the games industry is such a wonderful place. But thank you so much for your time, Will. It's been absolutely lovely to have
All right.
another catch up, another blather with you.
Yeah.
And I will put all the links to your LinkedIn, to your Blue Sky, and all of that in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Yeah, I'll dig those out for you. Honestly, well, thank you for having me. Thank you for enduring my lengthy, directionless answers. Like I say, I can edit copy. Yeah, honestly, it's such a genuine. I just love it. I mean, like, I've loved chatting to you about games and being enthusiastic. But the idea that that can be a podcast and people can listen to it, and if it can help people or excite people, yeah, and I guess, yeah, when you include those in the show notes, people are really genuinely welcome to reach out to me and ask stuff, whether they've been in games for 10 years longer than me or on day one of it. And yeah, I'm here for all of that because I love it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Will. It's been really lovely having a chat.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.